Good evening and welcome to Legal Tech Live, episode 80. I'm your host, Nick Rishwain. My co-host tonight is Katia Alcantar. She is the CEO of TextLawyer. She's also the owner of Fast Expunge Law Firm. Is that correct, Katia? Or are you president and CEO of that?
COO of TextLawyer.
COO of TextLawyer. Yeah. Did I say CEO?
And founder of Fast Expunge, yeah.
Founder of Fast Expunge. So thank you, Katia, for being here. Our guest tonight is Chris Brown of Contract Canvas. And Chris spends part of his time representing Kansas City startups, freelancers, and small businesses through Venture Legal, and part of his time building Contract Canvas, the digital contract platform for creative professionals. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us. I should say, for the sake of posterity, that this is March 26th. I'm currently under week 2 of quarantine from COVID-19. And so everybody is basically on lockdown, and here we are talking legal tech. Chris, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit more about yourself for anything that was not covered in the 2 sentences from your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, sure thing. First, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with both of you. I also am in week 2 of quarantine. My girls are upstairs sleeping, so hopefully they stay asleep. So I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer now for about 10 years. I work with Venture Legal, which is my own law firm. And like you said, I represent startups and a lot of freelancers. So a huge niche that I've really kind of somewhat accidentally fallen into is representing freelancers and creative professionals. So web developers, marketing people, wedding photographers and whatnot. And along the way, I ended up building and starting a Contract Canvas, which is our side business, totally separate from my law firm for ethics reasons and other reasons. We can definitely chat about that if you want to. But anyway, Contract Canvas is a digital platform that lets creative professionals, that same basic client base, create and e-sign their own contracts online. And we're trying to do it in a different format. So the contracts are designed for humans, not lawyers. So they've got icons and they're really easy to read. There's a summary page, but it's backed up by a full legal contract. So if they get in trouble, they can go to court if they had to with a full legal agreement in place. And so that's pretty much what I do nowadays.
Excellent. That was a nice summation of what you were doing. Tell us a little bit more, Contract Canvas, how this came to be.
Yeah, like 3 years ago, I met with a friend of mine who's a developer, software developer, and I was talking to him about building out some custom contract automation tools for me to use in my own law firm, because I figured, hey, if I could speed up my drafting, I could make more money and help more clients. What I do is very template based already. In fact, if you look at my website, there's like specific packages you can just basically buy. And so it's like I meet with a client for an hour, we talk through a bunch of stuff, and then I would draft their documents for them based on my templates. So I said, well, why don't I just speed up that template drafting? And then we got sidetracked building some other random tech stuff that we were excited about at the time. And it dawned on me a couple months after that why don't we build it and skip me, the lawyer, and offer it straight to the freelancer? So, LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, there's some companies already doing pretty similar things. But we thought we could do a much better job if we just simply found one small niche, so creative freelancers, and offered it to them so they could create their own contract and e-sign it through the platform. And I also know that the freelance workforce is exploding. So by, 2027 or so, over half of the workforce in America will be freelance based as opposed to W-2 employee based. It's just a change in the way we do work in America. So we're trying to capitalize on that and provide a solution for freelancers that otherwise would not use a lawyer for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Very good. Katia, have you got a question for our guest?
Yeah, so you kind of already answered it. I was about to say, well, first of all, this is a great service that you're providing. Too often the contracts floating around out there are convoluted and full of legal jargon. It's almost as if us lawyers are trying to maintain our monopoly over the drafting and negotiation of contracts.
No.
No. But you said you target freelancers, and you mentioned that it's because you expect the market to explode over the next 10 years. Are there any other reasons that you can tell me a little bit about why you're targeting freelancers? And if you plan to grow into other spaces?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, from a user standpoint, it's nice to have a big user base. So that's obviously one reason. But the other reason is somewhat of an access to justice issue. There's a lot of access to justice issues going on about the expungements. I know you're working on that. Just court access. There's all kinds of very serious issues in access to justice. But one area that I think kind of gets neglected is this middle area of people who do have money and might be able to afford an attorney, but they're not wealthy enough. I think it's like something like 80% of small business owners can't afford an attorney. And so what I've discovered in my practice is a lot of freelancers, they either cannot afford the lawyers or they just simply don't want to work with them because they think lawyers will slow down the deal, or that they'll get a contract that's just too hard to present to their client that scares the client or whatever. So in a large part of why we're doing this is because freelancers right now are just simply not getting the help they need. And I can't tell you how many of my clients come to me after freelancing for 1 or 2 or 3 years, but they come to me after they have their first fight with a client. And they show me some shoddy contract they're using, or worse, they don't have a contract at all. And I say, that sucks, and you're going to just kind of be left hanging here. You may not get paid. We could sue, but it's not enough money, blah, blah, blah. And then they say, okay, well, can you create a template for me? So I've really kind of seen that they're struggling out there because there's not a lot of great solutions for them. So that's what we're trying to solve.
So from a user standpoint, I'm a creator of, say, I do. Katia is a cellist, so she makes YouTube videos of her doing her cello, practicing cello, or doing some music, and she puts these YouTube videos out there. Now she's like, okay, well, somebody wants her to do some custom videos, and so they need to contract on that. How does she go about starting with Contract Canvas? What is the user journey there?
Yeah, so we let every freelancer create their first contract for free. So you just go to the website, click sign up, or try free contract, or whatever the call to action is. I forgot at this point. But anyway, you click the button, sign up, create an account. Immediately, we preload a example contract in there just so you can kind of touch that and see what it looks like if you want to. Or you can just click create new contract. And once you start that process, it's a lot like LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyers, a lot of the other platforms that are out there. We ask you for your name and info, your client's name and info, how are you paying, or how are you charging? So you can select hourly, fixed fee, payment by date, payment by milestone, retainer, a whole bunch of different choices. And then you type in a description of your services, and that can be as short as you want or as long as you want. We're all lawyers. I think we would say that the more detail you provide, the better, but sometimes freelancers don't want to. Anyway, you go through that workflow, you choose some answers about confidentiality, indemnification, other things like that, and then you click preview contract. And that like I said, your first contract is totally free, but we don't actually charge you until you send it to get reviewed by the client. So you click send to client. They then get an email from us that says, hey, Katia created a contract for you in Contract Canvas. Click here to review it. They go into the platform, they review it. They don't have to have an account though. Only the freelancer does. They review the contract. If they like it, they click sign. It comes back to you, you sign it, and then both parties get a final copy via email.
That's great. So you just detailed a really, really great workflow and process. And I'm curious as to how long it took you to develop that workflow and how long it took you to develop your MVP.
Yeah, a long time, way longer than I wanted it to take. We got started kind of by accident in 2017. In fact, so we pitched the idea to WeWork. I work out of WeWork here in Kansas City. And at the time, it was just kind of like, yeah, we might build this and see what happens. And WeWork said, hey, fly down to Austin for our Creator Awards. You're a finalist. And then I went down there, and then they gave me $18,000. And so on the flight home, I was literally drafting our operating agreement because we didn't even have a bank account to put money into. And so that at that moment, we kind of said, okay, we got to do this for real. But anyway, my co-founder and I were just kind of taking our time with it. It was taking a long time because he only had so much free time. We didn't have a whole lot of investment money. We hired some developers. Anyway, it took us 2 years to get to a point where the product was working. And for the last 3 or 4 months, we've been beta testing it. And well, actually, we've been beta testing since November. But anyway, we went live and started charging users in January. And we've got 2 new developers on the team who are working really fast, which is awesome. But it was a lot slower than I wanted it to be, but I think that's kind of normal. A lot of my clients are in that same boat.
Yeah. What is give us an idea of the pricing structure
Oh, yeah.
creators?
Yep, very simple. You can pay $20 a month, and you get up to 5 contracts a month. Which for most creators, that's going to be way more than they need. Or if you don't want to pay a monthly subscription, you can pay $40 and just do 1 contract. So if you're doing 2 or 3 a year, it's probably cheaper just to do $40 a pop. But if you want the premium features, which we're building out now, and the ability to do more, it's only $20 a month.
Wow, excellent. I want to thank those who are watching tonight. Looks like we got Mark Palmer and Colin Levy over in the Facebook group, and we got Kevin Gillespie and Blaine Corty here in Zoom. Thank you all. If you have questions for our guest tonight is Chris Brown at Contract Canvas, making contracting easy for creators. Katia, do you have a follow-up for Chris?
Yeah, you just talked about your pricing model. Did you go through or experiment with anything different before you went with the one you currently have?
We haven't experimented with anything different yet, but I interviewed several dozen freelancers along the way, and I asked them all about pricing and what would you pay, and I got all kinds of answers. My first pricing option was going to be $10 a month, and almost every freelancer I talked to that I said that to, they were like, well, that doesn't sound reliable. You sound too cheap. I was like, okay, fine, we'll raise the money.
Yeah.
And some people were saying they'd pay $50 a month. Other people were saying they'd spend 100 or 150 per contract. But the sweet spot was somewhere in the $20 to $30 range. And so the reason we went with 20 is because when you look at Xero and FreshBooks, all these other paid subscription tools that freelancers already use, $20 was kind of like the sweet spot. And it definitely covers our costs. And so we feel like that's a good pricing range. And the $40 per contract was just kind of an average of what everybody told me they would pay. I still don't entirely know how well that one's going to work. We definitely prefer subscription users for lots of reasons. So we're really trying to drive all of our users to the subscription model.
Yeah, it's really interesting how when you're trying to increase access to justice, you lower your prices, but at the same time you run into this issue of what is credible, what's a credible price, because our users are so used to paying a lot of money for legal services.
Yeah. And there's a perception issue with that, is there not, Chris? The perceived value. If it's too cheap, what am I getting?
Yeah,
exactly. And one of the ways that I kind of pitch it is if you hire a lawyer, the average billable rate in America is somewhere around like $250 or so. Obviously, it depends on the jurisdiction, but for us, 1 year subscription is $240, and we'll probably have like an annual plan at some point where you get 10% off or something. I don't know, but we just haven't gotten there yet. But we also think that we might play around with some higher end tiers. So if you want additional features or more contracts, or if you want additional users, like if you have a small agency with 3 people and each one of those people needs an account, we might do like a $30 tier or something. We're not really sure yet though.
Excellent. We have a question. We have a few questions. We've got 2 here from Kevin Gillespie, and K-Dog Gillespie is how he is referred to himself in the Zoom room. His first question is, how do you replace the value add lawyers provide? Specific clauses or disclaimers that apply to a specific client or client situation.
Yeah, we're not a replacement for lawyers. I definitely don't look at this as replacing lawyers. We will never be as good as hiring a lawyer one-on-one. There's no question about that. But what we do is we let the freelancers add whatever terms they want. So at the end, there's an additional text box where they can type any custom terms that they want to type in. So if there's just something that we didn't cover, they can type it in there. For example, one of our users was saying, well, I want to take equity in my client. And I was like, oh, well, we're not going to have tools for that. The scope of what you might be asking for is a very limited use case, and we cannot provide questions for that. But you can check the custom payment term box and type in whatever terms you want. Of course, laypersons or non-lawyers, whatever you want to call them, may not know exactly how to type that out, but I would be arguing that if that's the deal you're striking with somebody, you should probably hire a lawyer. We're not trying to replace lawyers. We're trying to fill a need that's not currently being filled by the legal marketplace.
That's fair.
Yeah, that also makes me think about, if you probably have basic clauses in there, the boilerplate stuff like non-competes, that might vary, or that does vary by jurisdiction. So how do you approach that?
Today, what we have is a warning label on those kinds of questions. So non-compete, non-solicitation, because those are so different in different jurisdictions, especially out in California. And so that warning says, hey, some of these provisions may not be enforceable in your state. What we want to do long term, though, is customize our contracts so that whatever state you're in, they've been reviewed by a lawyer in the state, and they're actually enforceable in that state in terms of those things. The good news is most of the questions or most of the topics like payment and services, confidentiality, a lot of that stuff is pretty standard across the country. Obviously, if you're doing $1 million deal, you shouldn't use this platform. The risk to you is just too big. This is really designed for the $5,000, $10,000, maybe $20,000, website development projects or whatever, where you may not be willing to pay a lawyer, and the risk to you in that situation is fairly low.
Right.
Okay. Colin Levy has a question for us over in Facebook. He says, have you noticed any uptick in signups or in inquiries since the start of the pandemic?
That's a great question. Colin's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, Colin, not like the number of signups he's going to experience after having been on this show. Let's make that awesome. Clear, Colin.
Colin and I spoke a few weeks back on the phone. Actually, we've talked a couple times. He's awesome on Twitter and elsewhere. No, we haven't really, not yet. So I'm trying to tread pretty lightly here. I don't want to take advantage of what's going on. And I think, I definitely think that the shift to the freelance workforce is going to be accelerated by what's going on. What is it, like 3.3 million people this week went file for employment, and that number is just going to go up. So we are already moving towards freelancers, a freelance workforce, and that's going to continue to rise. So I anticipate my user base growing as well. I don't mean that in any kind of a yay way. This is obviously bad what's going on. I think we're early enough in this crisis that people are not quite, the people that have been forced into freelancing in the last 2 or 3 weeks are not even necessarily at a stage where they're ready to start hiring us. But at some point in the next month or two, we are actually about to start ramping up our marketing, buying paid ads on Instagram and other places. Again, not to take advantage of it, but just simply because that's what we were planning to do on April 1st. So I think this is ironically good timing for us. Again, I keep sounding like I'm taking advantage of a bad situation, but I think in like 5 years, if we are a success story, I have a feeling we'll look back and be like, you know what, that timing for us was perfect that we launched like 2 months before the virus hit. Or we could totally tank because everything in the world's going to hell right now. So who knows?
Well, that you were talking about Instagram just now and marketing. What is your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, so we have a referral strategy that we definitely want to take advantage of. Freelancers, by their nature, are tightly connected to other freelancers. They have to be to provide services to clients and so on. In fact, I don't have it set up now, but I just thought of this. I can create a LegalTechLIVE referral code, Nick, that you can share out on wherever, and anybody that signs up with it will get 30 days, will get a free month of subscription in addition to the first free contract. But anyway, so that's the number one thing, is that we want our freelancers to refer to their other friends, and they're already doing that, which is awesome. Then we just have a lot of paid media opportunities in terms of Instagram and other places, which I don't love because, there's limitations on how much of a reach you can get there, but that's certainly an option. And then the third thing that we're really going to focus a lot on is partnering with organizations. In Kansas City, we've got the Freelance Exchange. There's freelance organizations in pretty much every city in the country, and we're going to try to go through those channels to reach their user bases, as well as like government sponsored groups. We have a KC Source Link, which receives funding from city and county and state levels to support entrepreneurs, and we hope that we can partner with them to reach their user bases as well. It's going to be slow, I think. I don't imagine we're going to grow like Facebook or whatever, of course. We're also not trying to be the next Facebook or Google. We don't want to be $1 billion company. Well, I mean, I guess that would be awesome, but I don't see it happening. But we don't need that.
As my guest, I want you to become $1 billion company because that's good for, for other people to see, but I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. That doesn't have to be the goal. Want to thank Mitch Jackson, Ashley Pepitone, Daniel Jaffe, Adam David Long, Jason Velez for all showing up. If you have questions, our guest is Chris Brown of Contract Canvas tonight. He's creating contracts for creators easy. Try saying that 3 times in a row. And we have another question for Kevin. How do you replace the custom stuff? Ambiguity creates opportunity for litigation. So how do you replace the custom kind of clauses in a contract for a creator?
Yeah, I mean, again, I mentioned that you can add those additional terms. But a feature that we're going to add here pretty soon is the ability for you to turn off any provision in our contract that you don't like, and then type in your own. So, for example, confidentiality right now, you can make it mutual, unilateral, or not have it at all. But once you pick one of those three options, you get the language we give you. You can't really change that. Technically, you could change that by typing in the additional terms, this section overrides the normal confidentiality, but that's kind of messy. So what we want to do is have the ability for you to turn off the confidentiality provision altogether and type in your own. So that's kind of our workaround for that. But I'll be honest, I don't see a lot of freelancers doing that. I've met with hundreds of freelancers over the years, and they always come back to the same basic topics: getting paid on time, making the IP transfer happen after they get paid, how do they describe their services? And those are the big things. Freelancers that are doing these $5,000 or $10,000 projects are not getting hyper detailed into those provisions.
That's good to know. Katia, be my guest.
So let's talk a little bit about your conversion rates. Yeah, how are you converting your customers?
Slowly right now. We've had like 40 or 50 people that have been with us over the last, 4 months or so. But we don't have enough data yet to say any legitimate numbers. We're hoping that once we get the social ads going on April 1st, that we can start tracking that. And we've outsourced that to a local marketing company because I'm pretty decent at it, but they're going to be way better at managing the audiences and tracking all the data with the pixel connections and all that stuff to see who's converting.
Very good. And how about, can you tell us anything about number of active users? Are you roughly the 40 to 50 that you just mentioned? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And tell us a little bit about your is there a repeat type of user, avatar who continues to come back? Is it painters? Is it
Oh yeah, good question.
Music artists, anything like that?
So I talk a lot about freelancers, but what I've actually found is just small agencies. Our biggest users right now are marketing agencies who are kind of doing things like our marketing partners, so running Facebook ads and so on. In fact, they're using our platform to send us their client agreement, which is awesome. We actually use our own tool. And then web developers, that's the other big area. So WordPress website developers and so on.
Very cool. And we have a follow-up from Colin, which I think we may have touched on, but let me have you answer this for him. How do you handle negotiations between the two parties?
Right now, the only way to negotiate is for the client to email the freelancer directly. And so when the client gets the preview, there's a little box on the side that says email your freelancer or email the contractor if you have to make changes to this contract. What we want to do though is make negotiation easier. One of the pain points that I've learned from freelancers is that the negotiation between them and their client is really sticky. They don't like dealing with it. They hate the entire process. So one of the things that we want to do is let them turn on what we would probably call like negotiation mode or something like that, so that the client, when they get it, they can literally click on the section. So like if they get say they get a contract that doesn't have confidentiality, or maybe it's unilateral in favor of the freelancer only, they could just click a button and say, well, I want this to be mutual. And then it would flip it. And maybe payment, they could click payment and change it from $500 to $400 or whatever it might be. And then that would just go back to the freelancer for them to review whatever changes the client made. So we're trying to simplify that too. That feature is probably a little ways off, but when I talk about that to freelancers, they just absolutely love it.
Very cool. Katia?
Just following up on that, it seems like a value, how you differentiate yourself from the big names like LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so we get comparisons to them a lot, which is totally fair. I've gone through all of their generator tools, and I just feel like what they present to you is a extremely basic contract, even more basic than what we prepare. Those companies are focused on doing a million things. They're doing wills and trusts and estates and all that stuff, a million different types of agreements. We are going to be hyper focused on just the creative professional base, and they only need a few types of contracts. And this actually gets back to your question earlier. I don't think I mentioned this about, do we plan to expand? We've got some ideas on expanding, but for the time being, we're going to focus solely on the creative professionals. So they need the client agreement that we're already doing. They need a subcontractor agreement when they use their other freelance friends. If they hire a copywriter to help them with a website build or whatever. They need non-disclosure agreements. Sometimes they need to be standalone outside of those documents. And those three documents, those three contracts are 95% of what these kind of freelancers need, because they're not doing massive deals. It's just those three. So anyway, what we want to do is focus heavily on those three documents and make them as perfect and easy to use as possible. Whereas LegalZoom and everybody else is doing a million things, we want to just do one thing. We'll never be as big as LegalZoom, but that's okay. And then the other way that we really differentiate ourselves is just the version of the contract you get. If you go to contractcanvas.com, you can see a little preview. I mentioned earlier, there's icons in plain English. Our contracts are probably the easiest contracts to understand from just a regular human being standpoint, which is why we say they're designed for humans, not lawyers. But again, just to be clear, underneath the signatures,
We're not
there is a no, you're not humans. Underneath the signatures, there is a full legal agreement there. So it's impossible, or I shouldn't say it's impossible, but if there is a dispute or anything goes wrong, they do have a full legal agreement there. It's not just a one-pager.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Ashley Pepitone out of Georgia says, I have to hop off early, but I have a past life as an event and editorial stylist and still has tons of friends in the creative industry. She says this will be great for wedding and event industry people as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, and she said she'll spread the word. So you may want to get her on your radar as well. Jason Velez asks, he sees icons on your homepage. Are these part of your legal design? He's really interested in using visual cues to help people understand contracts. He's on the client agreement he's referring to.
Great question.
Yeah, so I have icons on our website. I'm pulling up my website now just to make sure I remember what icons I use on there. Shout out to my wife, by the way. I built the website, but she built all the cool, fancy looking photos and things.
Very cool.
It's a great website.
Thank you very much. She's upstairs keeping our girls quiet during the quarantine. Okay, anyway.
Did you not get my email where the kids and spouses, these have all made appearances previously?
My girls made an appearance
acceptable.
on a meeting earlier today, but it's past their bedtime. We want them to go to sleep because I don't want to deal with them all night. Anyway.
Let's be as loud as possible.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I've got my headphones in, so all you're going to do is hurt my ears. So, okay, on my home page, there is a square image of the client agreement, example. And so that's where you can see the icons. And I didn't mention this earlier, but we are going to make it so that the icons will change based on the deal terms. Again, another feature we want to add when we have time. But if the intellectual property is going to be owned by the client, the icon will be one icon. If it's owned by the freelancer, but a license to the client, it'll be a different icon. Or if expenses are reimbursable, they will be a different icon than if they're not reimbursable. The idea being that the freelancer and maybe their client, if their client sees enough of these, can literally just look at the icons, get a quick understanding of like the 4 or 5 things that they really care the most about, and then quickly sign it. I haven't done, so anyway, to the question that you mentioned, you can see the icons there. You can also log in and create an account and go all the way through to the end if you just want to see how this works. It's totally free to use. You only get charged if you make more than one contract and they actually get signed. But anyway, what I haven't done is in my law firm, I haven't done icons in my contracts, but I've actually thought about it because it's a cool idea. And I should back way up. This all came out of the Creative Commons movement. Are you familiar with the Creative Commons licenses?
Familiar, but for our audience and for our replay viewers and podcast listeners, give us a little feedback on it. So
Creative Commons is like open source for creative works. They've got a whole bunch of different licenses you can license your works under, and they have attribution rights and the right to make derivative works, and so on. And the way that they do it is by icons. So at the bottom of the license, or at the bottom of whatever it is that you're licensing with the Creative Commons license, is a small little box that has 4 or 5 icons. And that's kind of where this idea came from for the icons, is to make it easy to understand what the contract says just by looking at a small number of icons. So anyway, I think the idea is really awesome to represent legal terms using design elements like icons, but I haven't gotten around to actually putting them in my law firm practice because, actually, I don't know why. I say because, but I don't really have a good reason. I just haven't done it.
Because that's where we do everything a little bit backwards compared to on the technology side is in the practice of law. Adam David Long asks a good question. He says, seems like every customer can be an evangelist for you. One way, and he gives a couple of examples, one way that Hotmail spread was that everyone who sent an email from Hotmail was essentially advertising Hotmail. Similar for DocuSign. Is there anything you can do to make your users evangelists like this?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier we've got the referral code. So if a freelancer user refers their friend, both parties get a free month, and there's no limit to that. So if you refer 12 friends, you can literally get 12 free months. The other point to that I am excited to hit on at some point is we want to have accounts for the clients as well. Right now, if you send a contract to the client, they don't have to log in, and they'll never actually have to log in. But the client could feasibly in the future create an account and then create contracts to send out to their freelancers. So the beautiful thing is we'll be capturing all those client email addresses. And at some point, we'll probably send them an email and say, hey, did you like using Contract Canvas with Bob? Okay, great. Wouldn't you love to send all of your contracts through Contract Canvas? Tell all of your freelancers to use this. And that client who might use 5 or 10 freelancers over the span of a few years could introduce us to 5 or 10 new users. So that's one thing that we're definitely considering.
Very cool. Katia.
Chris, you're a Y Combinator graduate, is that right?
No, I went through the, I wish. We went through the YC startup school.
YC startup school, okay, yeah.
But I don't think I have that on any of my marketing. I hope I don't. But we did win a couple creator awards. Well, we won one creator award through WeWork and got $18,000, and then we got to the finalist round of the next year's creator awards. There was, I think, 6 of us finalists up for $350,000, and they flew us to Nashville, and we pitched in front of Ashton Kutcher and a bunch of other people. And I was like this close to $350,000, but I didn't get it. But that's okay.
So that I think that's a great follow-up to Katia's question is, what are you looking at for funding? You're self-funded right now, it sounds like.
Yep.
Are you out there seeking fundraising?
Not yet. We got that $18,000 initially, which funded some of our development work. Otherwise, it's entirely self-funded. We haven't had to send out too much stuff yet to third parties because we've got a couple developers in-house plus myself. So we've been able to do most of it by ourselves. Plus my wife is a designer, so she's helping us with icons and websites and stuff. But otherwise self-funded. We're just putting whatever money we need to into it to start growing it. We're trying to minimize our expenses. Our biggest expense right now is paying HelloSign for their API because we use their signature process. But we are maybe next week, if not next week, by the end of April, we will have our own e-signature process built out so we can stop paying HelloSign. Sorry, HelloSign. But it's just too much money for us to keep paying them. So it's cheaper just to build our own. But anyway, that's the plan. We might try to raise venture money at some point. I think one of the problems for our company though is that we're not going to be the next Facebook. You know, we're not going to be $1 billion company. So a lot of venture funds are not going to be very interested in what we're building from a financial standpoint. So if we do raise any money, I imagine it would be some small, relatively small friends and family round. I have a lot of lawyers here in Kansas City that love what we're doing. And I think I could probably pull together a small group of 10 or 20 of them to kick money in. But I don't know if I just don't know if I even want to do that. If we could self-fund this and get it going like MailChimp did, you know, and build a company, even if it takes us longer to get there, but if we could fully own it, that would be really awesome. That's a nice feeling. And there's nothing wrong with having a self-sustaining, self-bootstrapped
bootstrap business, essentially. There's nothing wrong with that. Katia, any follow-up on this?
Do you plan to grow your team anytime soon? Are you looking for other founders or, yeah?
Not yet. My next goal will be to bring on a female, because right now it's just 3 guys, at least in terms of ownership and daily working on it. But I need to get a female in here because a huge chunk of our user base is female. And I feel like having a female on the team who is going through the workflow and everything would be a lot of value to us. From there, I don't know. I don't know if we need a huge team. We think we can support several thousand people with just a small 4 or 5 person team. I think the biggest unknown is what kind of customer support are we going to have to provide. If we have 100 emails a day, that we may not be able to manage that. But if we only have 10 or 20 emails a day, I'm pretty sure we can manage that with a tiny team.
It is one of the really nice aspects of a technology company and a bootstrap technology company. I work for one in my day job, and leveraging technology, you can do quite a bit without significant numbers of people if you're using the right technology, and you can serve several thousand customers relatively easy without a huge staff. If you were to come back, because we're getting up to about 40 minutes here, if we were to have you back in a year, where would you expect Contract Canvas to be?
That's a great question. Well, my financial
say
projections.
say that again for everybody. Because
Nick,
anytime that somebody actually says I've asked a great question, I really like to drive that home.
Nick asked a very good question.
Agreed.
My financial projections, which of course go up and to the right, show that we've got like several thousand users in a year, but realistically, I don't think we'll be quite that far along. I hope to have several hundred users actively using the platform on a monthly basis by, I don't know, probably before the end of the year, but at most maybe 500 or 1,000 by end of year, I feel like would be a really good goal. The beauty of this, like I was saying earlier, is with our referral network, I think once it starts to spread, it's going to spread quickly. That's good and bad, because if we grow too fast, I don't know if we'd be able to manage the growth. Part of why I really like growing slow is we've been able to fix things quickly as they break. So we didn't want to grow too fast. With that said, if we had 500 people wanting to sign up tomorrow, we'd figure it out. I mean,
right.
To Katia's question, I would find team members however I had to grow that. So I don't know. We're not trying to grow too fast, but we want to certainly get enough money coming in to pay all the bills and to be able to pay us a salary at some point.
Excellent. Katia, any final questions from you for Chris?
That's it. I'm good.
Chris, is there anything we didn't cover in the last 40 minutes that you really need to drive home for our viewers, our replay viewers? Daniel Jaffe is also here. I'm not sure. Thank you, Daniel, for being here. Anything you need that we didn't cover that you'd like to cover, either user base, for lawyers who may be interested in sending some of their clients to you for those contracts that they probably don't need to pay a lawyer for, any topic.
The one thing we didn't talk about, which is kind of interesting, is the ethics of all of this. And there's a lot of, and maybe I don't want to talk about it, I guess, but at the same time, it's interesting because we've actually banned the state of North Carolina from using our platform, not the state, but the freelancers living in the state, because they've got very strict laws on what the unauthorized practice of law is, and we don't want to cross that boundary. Other states like Texas, kind of Utah in a way, are taking a different approach and saying that what we are doing is not the practice of law. And so we're trying to figure out what's going to happen, because California has their task force, Utah has their sandbox. There's proposals in Florida that involve only lawyers looking at the regulations, which is a joke, if you ask me. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens, because as these states change what it means to practice law, you're going to see a lot of companies like us popping up. And a lot of lawyers are afraid of that, but I really don't think they should be, because if a lawyer is only providing the service that we're providing with software, they're not providing a very good service, in my opinion. It's not a very valuable service. I mean, lawyers should be providing like in-depth,
bespoke services.
Bespoke services. And when a client pays me a fixed fee to draft a contract for them, the biggest thing I feel like they get is sitting down with me for an hour to talk through what does it mean to use these provisions, you know? And but anyway, so it's just going to be interesting to see what happens on the ethical side of things, because I'm sure there's going to be other states that don't like what we're doing, and our solution right now is just to deactivate it for their state, because we can't comply with every single state's different ethical rules.
Yeah, that's very overwhelming or burdensome for a lot of legal tech startups. And probably I don't talk about the ethical aspects of companies that are on this show enough, in part because I've chosen to ignore some of that, because if we focus on that, then no innovation will actually get done if we're worried about the regulations that are happening. So I've probably chosen to avoid that topic on the show subconsciously, but it is a very relevant question, Chris, or a very, very relevant concern. Chris, where do people get in touch with you?
Contractcanvas.com is our website. You can email me at chris@contractcanvas.com. You can also find me and my law firm at venturelegalkc.com. And my email there is also just chris@venturelegalkc.com. So either one of those will work. I'm also on Twitter a lot at CSB Counsel. I've been tweeting a lot lately because I've got more time on my hands and stressed out and reading too much news. But anyway, I'm all over Twitter lately. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we all are. Yeah. And Katia, where do people get in touch with you now?
Well, you can reach me at Katia@textlawyerinc.com or Katia Alcantar@gmail.com or Twitter. Katia.
Katia in PDX on Twitter. Well, thank you both for being here. We will have, I think I've got one more show lined up before spring break. So I thank you. Our guest tonight was Chris Brown of Contract Canvas. Find him on contractcanvas.com. Reach out to him, test out the software. And our guest co-host tonight, the fabulous, the always fabulous Katia Alcantar. You can find her at is there another there's another company that you have an email for that one now too, Katia?
Sure.
If the website's up
to contact me right now.
What's that?
There are so many different ways to contact me now.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, fastexpunge@gmail.com.
Fastexpunge@gmail.com. Is there a website up for that yet?
Yes, fastexpunge.com.
Excellent. Okay, so there you have it, folks. Hit rewind and figure out all those places that you can contact Katia. Stick around. We should have our next show. We may be up next Thursday. I'll let you know, but we will have a special Saturday edition with Richard Tromans of Artificial Lawyer. That will be coming up on April 4th in preparation for his California Legal Innovators one-day conference. Thank you both and have a good night. Don't disappear after we stop recording.